Commercial contracts. Now, there's one thing which is unavoidable in life and unavoidable in business, and that is contracting. If you think about it, one of the first contracts you probably entered into is your mobile contract with the mobile service provider or with the Wi-Fi/internet service provider. You enter a contract when you rent a bicycle. You enter into a contract when you buy a car, when you buy a house. You enter into a contract to buy a business. You enter into a contract when your company issues shares. You enter into a contract when you employ people or where you are the employee. Contracts form an integral part of businesses. When you start a business, you need a partnership or shareholders agreement with possible shareholders. You have a supply agreement with where you buy your products, or when you sell services, for instance, you have a services agreement. And of course, there are different ways to constitute an agreement. It can be the acceptance of terms and conditions on your website. It can be a signed agreement. It can even be a verbal agreement, what we talk of a handshake agreement. And it can be what we call a tacit agreement, an unspoken agreement. But through our conduct, an agreement has come into life. For instance, if someone exchanged cash and received a product by means of the actions, a contract is entered into. With some contracts, there are certain very specific laws which apply, especially with regards to consumer agreements, even when it comes to international agreements, when someone were to get married, or when it comes to a will, although a will in itself is not necessarily an agreement, but there are certain legal formalities surrounded. So over and above what we agree with one another, it's important to know that there might be some laws which apply to the contract immediately or which needs to be incorporated into an agreement. Now, we have these agreements in all spheres of lives and in business, but it's very, very important that we understand what needs to be in a contract, whether we are party A or B to it, because in practice one sees that people have a specific reality or they understand the transaction in a certain way, and between communication with lawyers and other partners and counterparties and parties on the other side of the agreement, there are some information or some understanding which go lost in translation. And then in the document itself, what one party intend of or giving consensus to are not worded in the correct way. Now, there are many reasons why it happened. It can be broken telephone, there are too many people involved. It can be that as time passes, things have changed but are not communicated correctly. And then of course on the other party to the agreement. When you have advisors involved and other people involved, everyone has their own kind of understanding. But it's very important, if you are a contracting party, to make sure that your intention is contained in the agreement, that you understand the legal implications, the laws which applies to your agreement, because you might not necessarily be aware of it, but that your advisors point it out to you, sleep on it, make sure logically it's 100% correct. A lot of logic and contracts goes hand in hand. It's not always rocket science. Make sure it's 100% correct, you're comfortable with it. It contains what's agreed, because on the end of the day, an agreement is paperwork which contain in agreement and understanding consensus of both parties to a transaction. An agreement itself, or contained in a contract, is not that just fall out of the sky.